In your own words, can you say who you are and what you do?
I'm Tamara Santibañez, and I'm an artist. I'm a visual artist and a tattoo artist, and also an independent publisher.
You have your hands in so many different parts of the art world, tattooing, fine art, and publishing. So I'm wondering how each of those are different, and if you approach them differently, and like what challenges come with each of those.
Originally, I felt like I needed to keep them very separate from each other, and felt this need to compartmentalize them much more. I had always been given this impression that tattoo artists weren't taken seriously in the art world because it's considered, I guess, more of a craft or a folk art. I always felt like I had to keep that part of it very adamantly as like my day job, and not bring it into the art that I was making. Now I think that it's become a lot more holistic, and that all of the parts have started to inform each other much more. And tattooing, I think, is kind of at the center of that. It's become this hub that brings a lot of people and information and concepts and outlets into my life. My own work I find to be sort of this refuge. It's definitely really therapeutic. And it's a space where I can work through things that I'm thinking about in a way that's a little more private at times, or a little more personal or intimate. And the publishing for me is sort of a way to bring in other people, and to try to support work that I see being important. What I'm most fascinated with is sort of the intersectionality of identities, and where people are like doubly or triply marginalized because of those intersections, or how they're marginalized differently because of how these things combine in their experience. So like LGBTQ folks who are incarcerated, people of color in punk spaces, trans folks in kink spaces. So that's what I'm most interested in hearing about and hearing from.
I see through looking at your work that you're very interested in the cultural significance that objects hold. So I'm curious through like how does imbuing these characters or language of a particular culture affect the symbolism of the objects that you're using?
I don't know, I guess I'm trying to ask myself questions about like faith and devotion, about domestic spaces, about the body, about sites of worship, and how there are similarities and crossovers between Latinx and like Chicanx culture specifically, and punk and heavy metal and like BDSM, queer community. Just thinking about bringing things into like these imagined household spaces that were maybe not allowed in the households. Like if in your house growing up you were like not able to be out as being queer, or like not able to have a conversation with your family about like wanting to be tattooed, or like if they didn't understand your interests as a teenager, like kind of trying to create these objects that are in a way symbolize like being able to co-inhabit those spaces simultaneously.
I know that you, from previous interviews, said that you discovered Chicanx culture through magazines when you were like an adolescent, and I feel like we are very lucky to have, and very privileged to have the language that we do to talk about our identity, but for a lot of people that doesn't come, or and even for us, like we didn't grow up, it kind of was something we need to search for or come across. A lot of your interests, especially with Discipline Press, is about marginalized communities and those voices. And so I'm curious what you think could change that experience, like an access to language, or like what you hope people would possibly get from looking at your work, or like looking at Discipline Press.
I think that we all have a sense that no one's experience is like ours. Not in like an exceptionalist way. Like I think that people, in like a lonely way, you know. I think that we often can feel isolated in our experience and think that no one will understand what we have gone through or what we're going through. And I do think you're right that it is a huge privilege, and I see that being generational, especially for people who are the children of immigrants. I have this conversation with a lot of friends of mine whose parents came to the United States and had this enormous task of like assimilation and trying to stabilize and build a foundation for family and dealing with issues of safety or like passing. I think a lot of people around my age or younger we're lucky to be in a stable enough place where we don't have to worry about the same concerns that our parents did in the same ways, and we have a lot of freedom to ask ourselves these bigger questions about who we are and where we come from and like what our identity is, what's our community. And I think that's really exciting. But I also see there being some tension with older generations because they still have a lot of anxieties about I don't know what it means to live here, or what it means to express a certain part of your culture, and what the repercussions of that might be. I mean, one universal thing that I've encountered with people that I talk to about these things is that no person I've talked to feels 100% confidence in their identity and in who they are, and everyone lives with this imposter syndrome. And that is so heartbreaking to me, but I understand it. I experience that all the time. But in hearing person after person telling me that they also feel this anxiety or this insecurity, and they feel that they're not enough of one thing or another thing, I don't really know what the remedy is for that, but I think talking about it more is really important, and acknowledging that is, acknowledging it as something that's not an individual fault, but rather like a systemic force that's being placed upon us or acting against us. That's keeping us all feeling that way.
I know you come from Latinx and Chicanx culture, and you also are very much in the kink community. I know a lot of kink has to do with like consent and respect. And what do you feel like there's things in your daily life that you practice that you've learned from being part of the kink community?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think that something I think is really crucial in the kink community, and this isn't something that everyone possesses. Not everyone in that community is coming from this perspective, and that's something I'm trying to be more discerning about as far as how I build my own close community. But to me, it's about having an acute awareness of power dynamics and how to approach those from both a wider global perspective and an extremely intimate personal perspective. So I find that people in kink who are either people, trans folks, people of color, queer folks, have a really different understanding of those power dynamics than people who are like white, like cisgendered, hetero couples who are interested in investigating power dynamics. Obviously there's gender dynamics there that exist, but to me the question is sort of about how are we going to invert or subvert those dynamics in a way that's going to be healing or gratifying or exciting or fun, rather than like how are we going to repeat the existing oppressive structures in a way that we're expected to like enjoy. You know what I mean?
You straddle both the art world and tattooing world, and I'm wondering how has the art world prepared you for the tattooing world, or vice versa?
Oh, I don't know. That's a really good question. I think in the art world, you have to be very self-centered in a way as an artist. It's like about your work, your expression, maintaining like a purity of your art, right? But in tattooing, you have to really set a lot of that aside. I think a lot of that is,
you said
like
ego,
I said earlier,
you
have to take your ego out of it. And but at the same time, tattooing has taught me a lot about the value of your own work and being able to set a monetary value on your time. And that's helped me a lot in the art world. because I think there is a lot of potential for exploitation in the art world. People are like, it's great exposure, do this for free, let's sell your work for less just so that it gets more eyes on it. And so tattooing has really given me a baseline to operate from, to be like, this is what I make hourly, and like, how do I negotiate from that in a way that's going to feel good to me.
Okay, so we're going to go to the last part of the interview, which is fuck, marry, kill.
Oh, yeah.
The fuck, marry, kill game, and interpret those categories however you wish. Your 3 people are Kim Gordon, Tracy Emin, and Mike Kelly.
Oh my god, that's really hard. I don't know. Can I just like casually date all of them?
Yeah, totally. What would, like, each one would bring something totally different to, you would, that would be cool, because each person would bring something totally different to your life.
Yeah. I feel like with all of them, I would be like, we could see each other maybe like once every other week.